Good morning. My name is Reverend Ron Card, and I'm on staff at the Center for Spiritual Living, Carlsbad. And I would like to take this opportunity to welcome each and every one of you here this morning, and also welcome people who may listen to this later today, or maybe even tomorrow or later this week. I just want to welcome everyone. And this morning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a story. I'm going to tell two stories during my talk, and because I love telling stories, I really feel that we get so much when we hear stories, and you remember so much when you hear a story. And so this story has to do with a soldier. It was towards the end of World War II that a resistance fighter sat alone in a dark prison cell. And after being captured, he had been tortured, he had been starved, he had been abandoned, and he was just kind of waiting to die. And one night, the door to his cell opened, and someone shouted words of abuse to him. And then they hurled something into the darkness, and they closed the door. And as he began feeling around the dirt floor, he found a loaf of bread. And as he tore it open, he discovered that there was something inside. It was a matchbox. And this matchbox inside had several matches, and it had a scrap of paper in it. And so he lit the match, and he began to read the single word that had been written on the paper. That word was courage. You know, he never did really find out who wrote the message, but he did live through the war. And he credited this to that box of matches and that piece of paper that was inside the box for giving him the strength, the hope, the courage to survive. You know, whether you celebrate Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, Christmas, or the winter solstice, this is the season to peer into the darkness in search of light. Especially this year. This year, I believe that we have had an abundance of darkness taking the form of intolerance, arrogance, and hatred. So here is to those brave men and women who are willing to share their stories, speaking truth to power. May their actions inspire all of us to shine our light into the darkness to heal our world. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. I want to talk about light. The name of my talk is We Are the Light of the World. And I really believe we are. Each and every one of us. We have that spiritual power within us that is our light. And that's what we need to follow. But I also realized that as I was preparing my talk, reading my stories that I was going to use, I realized that you also have to talk a little bit about darkness. I thought that kind of ironic. In the scriptures, it says that you are the light of the world. A town built on the hill cannot be hidden, and neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. That's in that scripture, Matthew 5:14 through 16. And as I was reading and getting information on my talk and stuff, there was a certain song that just kept echoing through my mind, and I'm sure a lot of you know this song. It says, I am the light, you are the light, we are the light of the world. And I think that's where I came up with the title for my talk. Jesus came to reveal the true nature of his Father in heaven and showed what God is really like. Jesus tells his followers that they will be the ones to carry his light forth into the dark places of the world and of the human heart. To be the light means in times of darkness that you offer hope, you offer encouragement, kindness, that you offer compassion. Sometimes to be the light means to carry on the torch for what needs to be completed or maybe made anew. It may mean to give yourself in a new way to a situation or a cause or a relationship that you are in, to see it a little differently, to shine a little differently. When you shine your light, not only does it affect the world, not only does it affect the people around you, but it affects you, the way you see it. It can improve your mood. It can help us get a better and deeper night's sleep. It decreases depression and increases cognitive performance. There are just so many benefits of shining your light. Once upon a time, there lived people who loved the light. And as soon as the sun rose every morning, they were up to welcome it. They were singing songs of celebration for the light. And when the sun went down each evening, they sang other songs. Songs of missing the light of the sun. They loved the light. They just loved it so very, very much. But they really didn't love the darkness. And once darkness fell every night, they would hurry to their beds. And since they could only bear the darkness when they were asleep. And even then, total darkness was frightening to them. And so they always kept a fire burning in every room. So at least there was some light. The people's dearest wish was that the sun would not set in the evening, that darkness would never fall. But every day the sun set, and they sang their sad songs, and they endured the fearful, sad, strange darkness until they greet the sun again the next day. Now, in this land, there were born two remarkable children, and they were twins. One was a girl who she seemed to shine from within. Whenever she entered a room, everything seemed to get a little brighter, and the people just loved her so very much. And the other was a boy, and he seemed to bring darkness with him. And whenever he entered a room, everything seemed feel a little dimmer. And the people did not like him. They feared him because he reminded them of the great darkness of the night. But although the people loved the girl and did not love the boy, the twins, they just loved each other so very much. And because the girls loved her brother so very much, the people mostly let him be, even though they were just a little bit afraid of him. Now, as they grew, it became clear that these children were in fact magical children. The girl had the power to bring life back when it was either harmed or lost. And when she was a small child, she could heal small cuts and bruises. And when she grew a little older, she could heal broken bones and other large hurts. And by the time she was a teenager, she could make the crops grow faster, larger, and fuller. She could bring plants and animals that had died back to life. And the people, they kind of suspected a little that maybe she could even bring people back to life. But they were a little afraid to ask her, and she never really offered. But the boy, on the other hand, had this power to calm and quiet anything. And when he was a very small child, he would help his family go to sleep more quickly, thus saving them from the fear of the darkness. And when he was a little older, he could calm animals when they were frightened and make them still. Sometimes he would go first to an animal or a person who was hurt to help them to be calm enough for his sister's healing magic to work. And by the time he was a teenager, he could calm storms and winds and rains. He could bring anything to stillness. But the people's love for the light and the fear for the darkness only grew in time, perhaps more strongly with the twins always before them to remind them. And so one day, they decided to ask the girl for a favor. They asked her to see if her magic could hold the sun in the sky and stop the night from coming. Now the girl, she was a little reluctant, and but after many, many months of being asked to do this, she finally caved in. She finally decided to try it, just to get people to get off her back. And so one day, just as the sun was at the highest point in the sky, she went out on the top of the highest hill in the land, and she threw her arms up and to the sky, and she asked the sun to stop, to stay right where there at the top of the sky forever. Now, she wasn't immediately sure that anything had happened. Of course, the sun kind of moves a little slow across the sky. But before very long, it became clear that something really had happened, that the sun had stopped in the sky. The people, they were overjoyed. There was a big celebration. They sang all their songs celebrating the sun. They loved the girl even more, at least at first. For the first week or so, everyone was just so happy. They were just so content. Light, yes. But soon, they began to get tired. And although they had always slept with a fire to ward off the darkness, sleeping in the full light of the sun was quite another thing altogether. They tossed and they turned and they woke up constantly. Some of them remembered that the boy could help them sleep, and, they even asked him, but his power to bringing them back to sleep seemed to have disappeared along with the darkness. And so after a month or so, the exhausted, frustrated people, they began to see that constant sunlight was a problem. Though they still loved the light, they began to wish that the sun would once again move in the sky. Each person at first thought that they were the only ones that really thought this. And given the people's love of the light and the fear of the darkness, everyone was afraid at first to say anything about this growing longing for nighttime. But slowly, softly, as they began to confide in each other, they discovered that everyone felt this way. And they finally decided that something must be done. So they went back to the girl and they asked the girl to get the sun to move again. It was her magic that stopped it. And they figured that it would be her magic to get it to move again. And so she went back up on top of the highest hill and she threw her arms up in the sky. And she asked the sun to move. But guess what? Nothing really happened. She tried again. And then she tried a third time. But the sun stayed still. And sadly, she turned to the people and she told them there was nothing, absolutely nothing that she could do. There was a long moment of growing panic before the boy stepped forward. "Let me try," he said softly. Everyone thought about it for a moment and then decided, why not? The girl can't do it, maybe the boy can. So he took his sister's place on the top of the highest hill, and he threw his arms up in the sky, and he asked the sun to move. And guess what? The sun began moving at once, rushing towards the western horizon. And within 10 minutes, it had set. And within 15, it was full dark night. The people were caught off guard. They had all come out to the hill to see if the girls' magic would work. But they had no fires lit. They hadn't needed them in weeks. They had nothing with them to light their way in the darkness. They had never seen outside night before because they were terrified. They went to bed when it became dark. At first they tried rushing home to get away from the darkness. But they soon discovered that when they rush, they can't see where they are going. And, that's really kind of a bad idea. So they slowed down. They still peered at the ground, trying to get home as soon as they could. But then one of them looked up. "Oh," she explained, look it up there. Everyone, look up." And then they all saw the stars for the very first time. They had never been outside at nighttime before. And they had no idea of the incredible beauty of the sky full of stars. And they all stopped hurrying towards their home and stood and stared at wonder. And then they realized how very tired they were. And so slowly now, and with more reverence, they started home again. And they all slept for a very, very long time. Now the people rested and they were glad and appreciated the darkness for the very first time in their lives. And eventually the sun rose again. As it did, the people got out of their beds and they sang their songs to celebrate the coming of the light. But at the end of the day, as the sun began to sink towards the horizon, they did not feel like singing their sad songs. Instead, one of the musicians began singing a new song, a slow, quiet song of thanksgiving for the night. And soon the others joined in, and it became a new sunset song. And the boy and the girl, they grew up to be man and woman. And both of them were now very much loved by the people. And looking at them, still the best of friends as well as siblings. The people remembered the light and the darkness are best in balance. But like I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, it's really hard to talk about light and not say something or recognize darkness, because that's when our light shines the most. Now, I'm sure that most of us have wondered, well, maybe just a little bit, if the dark world around us will snuff out our lights. All of us will face seasons where the darkness will try to overtake us and extinguish our light. And it may be due to your own decision or circumstances beyond our choices or our control of those we love, or events beyond our control. However, we are not helpless. We are more powerful than we can actually believe. We can still shine in the dark world, and we must learn how to be the light in this dark world. And as we go into this new year, this is what we have to go in as. We have to go in as the light of the world, knowing that we're going to overcome no matter what happens, no matter what the circumstances are. We are going to move forward. As I come to the close of my talk, remember, God is as close to us as our breath. The light within each one of us is spirit. It's God. The life we live is God in action. As Jesus reminded us, we are the ones that are carrying the light on of spirit. We are the lights of the world. And I want to thank you for joining me this morning. And I will probably see you next year or next month. I think that's kind of funny to say, but I'll see you next month. And I'm going to be doing something new next month. I believe I'm going to start on January 20th. It's going to be Wednesday evening. I'm calling it Wednesday Wisdom. And I'm going to be speaking for 10 minutes every Wednesday from the 20th on. And my first talk it's going to be only about 10 minutes. It's going to be like a power lift through the week. And it's going to be over the rainbow. So I really surely hope that you join me for that, as well as tune in on our Sunday morning messages all January. So until I see you again, have a happy day, and I see you next year. Bye.